Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into, well, a really pivotal and frankly heartbreaking chapter of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Chapter 8.
Hmm.
This isn't just another page in a classic novel, it's more like a pressure cooker of injustice,
Hmm.
societal forces, and the really agonizing fallout of one man's ambition.
Exactly. And what's fascinating, is how this single chapter, the one focusing on Justine Moritz's trial and conviction, it becomes this tragic focal point. Shelley uses this fictional courtroom drama to explore some, well, very real and uncomfortable truth about how societies judge and condemn.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're stepping into a Frankenstein household that's already shattered, right? Young William's been murdered.
Right.
And now suspicion has tragically landed on Justine, who, was a cherished member of their household. Chapter 8 throws us right into the middle of her trial.
Yeah, straight in.
So our mission today isn't just to recount what happened, but to really dissect the evidence, understand the atmosphere, and figure out what drove this devastating outcome for Justine. We're looking for those surprising details, maybe about the justice system depicted and the immense psychological pressures at play.
And what's immediately striking, I think, as you delve into this chapter, is how Shelley sets the scene. The courtroom isn't presented as this, impartial space we might imagine.
No, not at all.
It's almost like a theater of public condemnation filled with what she calls wretched mockery. The Frankenstein family's there, and they're not just passive observers. Their grief, their shock, it becomes part of the spectacle.
And can you imagine Victor sitting there, knowing the truth? He knows who the real culprit is, yet he's just paralyzed. It's living torture, as he puts it, realizing his own curiosity and lawless devices set this whole horrific chain of events in motion. He even thinks about confessing himself, but realizes, maybe rightly, that it would just be dismissed as madness, wouldn't help Justine. It's a potent illustration of his internal torment and his, well, fatal inability to take responsibility.
It truly is. And then we see Justine herself enter this incredibly charged environment. Her initial appearance is described as calm, even exquisitely beautiful because of the solemnity.
Right.
There's a semblance of confidence in her innocence, a lack of trembling despite being gazed on and execrated by thousands. What does that composure tell you sort of about her state of mind then?
It's such a striking image, isn't it? The narrator points out that any natural sympathy her beauty might usually evoke is completely overshadowed by the public's, pre-existing conviction of her guilt.
Yeah, they've already decided.
We also get this telling detail that her tranquility is evidently constrained. And isn't it significant that her earlier confusion after William disappeared was already being twisted against her as proof of guilt? She seems trapped, really. Any reaction can be misinterpreted.
Precisely. She's trying to project courage, fully aware that any sign of distress would be immediately twisted, to fit their narrative of guilt. Then she sees the family, and there's that heartbreaking detail. A single tear, quickly recovered, followed by a look of sorrowful affection. To an objective observer, maybe that suggests innocence, right? But in this atmosphere, thick with prejudice, it's almost certainly misconstrued as, remorse after the crime.
Then the trial gets underway, and the evidence presented against Justine, well, on the surface, it looks pretty damning. Let's go through it. First, she was absent all night and was seen near where William's body was later found by a market woman.
Yes, and her response to that market woman's question was confused and unintelligible. Now, in a neutral context, you might think, well, shock, exhaustion.
Of course, searching for a lost child all night.
Right. But here it's immediately seized upon as suspicious behavior, further solidifying the perception of guilt in the community's eyes.
Right. Then she gets home and asks about William, seemingly feigning ignorance, which, again, in their eyes, just incriminates her further. And then you have the truly dramatic moment. She's shown William's body, reacts with violent hysterics, and is bedridden for days. This paints a vivid picture for the court, someone overwhelmed with guilt, at least, to those already predisposed to believe it.
But the pivotal piece of evidence, the one that really seals her fate in the court's eyes, is the discovery of the miniature picture in her pocket.
Yeah.
The very one Elizabeth identifies as having been around William's neck just before he went missing. The court's immediate reaction, as Shelley describes it, is profound horror and indignation. This single piece of circumstantial evidence becomes the undeniable focal point, overshadowing everything else for them.
It's chilling how quickly they jump to conclusions based on this one item, isn't it? Okay, let's turn to Justine's defense. She resolutely asserts her innocence, placing her hope in, the strength of her past character. What does that tell you about her understanding of justice at this point?
It speaks to her inherent belief in fairness, doesn't it? She thinks her good character will count for something.
Yeah.
She offers a detailed account of her whereabouts, visiting her aunt in Chain with Elizabeth's permission.
Right, near Geneva.
Then hearing about the missing child on her way back, searching for hours in the dark, finding the Geneva gates closed, seeking shelter in a barn. It's a logical sequence of events.
She even suggests, and this is crucial, I think, that she might have unknowingly been near where William's body was later found during her frantic search, and her confused state when questioned. She reasonably attributes that to a sleepless night, worry, anxiety. It all sounds quite plausible, doesn't it?
It does indeed. And regarding the damning picture, she can offer no concrete explanation for why it's in her pocket, which is, understandably damaging in court.
Okay.
However, she raises a very pertinent and logical question. Why would she steal such a significant item, easily identifiable, only to have it found on her so soon after?
Exactly. It makes no sense.
It's a point that seems to just fall on deaf ears amidst the prevailing atmosphere of accusation.
It really highlights the irrationality behind the accusations. She then makes a plea for character witnesses, hoping that testimonies from people who know her well will outweigh the seemingly incriminating circumstantial evidence. What does this reliance on character tell you about the social dynamics then?
It underscores the importance of reputation, social standing. Several people who've known her a long time do come forward and speak well of her.
Okay.
But, as the narrator points out, their fear of being associated with such a heinous crime, coupled with the overwhelming public hatred towards Justine, severely diminishes the impact. They're hesitant, maybe timid, unwilling to fully stand against the tide of public opinion.
It's a stark portrayal of how intense societal pressure can just erode even strong affirmations of character, undermine justice. Then we have Elizabeth's powerful intervention. Despite her own grief, she finds the strength to step forward and address the court.
And her appeal is deeply emotional, as you can imagine. She talks about her close, loving relationship with both William and Justine, basically considering them siblings.
Yeah.
She passionately declares her unwavering belief in Justine's complete innocence, grounded in her intimate knowledge of Justine's character and the utter lack of any conceivable motive. What do you make of Elizabeth's courage there, standing against that tide?
The narrator notes Elizabeth's bravery earns a fleeting murmur of approbation, like a brief moment of recognition.
A brief one.
But ultimately, it doesn't significantly sway the deeply entrenched public indignation aimed at Justine. Elizabeth's heartfelt plea, while incredibly admirable, just isn't enough to penetrate that wall of prejudice.
Which brings us to the inevitable verdict. Victor, consumed by agony and his certainty of the creature's guilt, can't even bear to watch the end. He rushes out.
Yeah, he bolts.
And the result is a swift, decisive condemnation, all black ballots.
It's terrifyingly absolute, based, as we've seen, largely on circumstantial evidence and public hysteria. And then, compounding the tragedy, comes the shocking news. Justine has confessed.
Oh, devastating. This news delivers such a blow, particularly to Elizabeth, who had so resolutely clung to her belief in Justine's innocence. Her reaction, Shelley describes it, it's heartbreaking. She starts to question the very existence of human goodness. How could someone she loved and trusted do this?
And Victor, he's utterly reeling. He knows with absolute certainty she's innocent, so this confession makes no logical sense.
None at all.
Yet, in the eyes of the law, society, it seals her fate. Then, in a moment of profound loyalty, maybe a sliver of hope, Elizabeth insists on visiting Justine in prison, and Victor, despite how excruciating it must be, goes with her.
The scene in the prison, it's depicted as incredibly somber, oppressive. Justine is in chains, utterly defeated, resigned. When Elizabeth speaks to her, Justine's immediate reaction is to ask if even Elizabeth, her friend, now believes she's wicked, a murderer. What does that reveal about her state?
Elizabeth, despite the confession, reassures Justine, telling her nothing could shake her belief in her innocence except, of course, Justine's own admission. And then the devastating truth comes out. The confession was a lie, coerced under duress.
Justine recounts the horrific pressure from her confessor. He threatened her with eternal damnation, excommunication, hellfire.
Wow.
If she refused to confess. Feeling utterly abandoned, with no one left believing her, she ultimately succumbed, tragically thinking it was the only path to spiritual absolution before death.
It's a truly chilling indictment, isn't it? How immense religious and societal pressures can force false confessions, especially from the vulnerable. Justine laments that this false confession now weighs heavier than any other imagined sin. And even facing execution, she's still worried about Elizabeth's future.
And in stark, tragic contrast, there's Victor, the true architect of all this suffering, consumed by guilt and despair, while Justine, forced into this false peace, tries to comfort Elizabeth. It's a powerful, disturbing inversion of who should be feeling what, isn't it?
Then comes the inevitable, heartbreaking conclusion. Elizabeth and Victor's desperate appeals for a reprieve are futile. The judges remain unmoved, minds closed. And so, Justine, innocent, dies on the scaffold, publicly proclaimed a murderess.
The narrative powerfully emphasizes the catastrophic failure of reason, compassion, true justice, all in the face of prejudice and misleading circumstantial evidence. Victor is left grappling with profound, enduring remorse, finally recognizing the full extent of his own responsibility, not just for Justine's death, but for the future suffering he now foresees for his loved ones.
He even has this chilling moment, a prophetic soul, Shelley writes, foreseeing more sorrow. Justine's unjust execution isn't just a single tragedy. It serves as a dark, ominous harbinger of more suffering to come, all stemming from his initial ambition and his silence.
So, as we conclude this deep dive into Chapter 8, several key takeaways should be clear. We see a justice system, Shelley's depiction anyway, that's fragile, flawed, dangerously susceptible to circumstantial evidence and, well, volatile public opinion.
Absolutely. And it starkly lays bare the devastating, far-reaching consequences of Victor's initial transgression and his subsequent cowardice in staying silent. Justine's tragic, undeserved fate serves as a brutal illustration of how easily innocence can be punished when caught in the machinery of societal pressure and prejudice.
This inevitably raises a profound question for you, our listener. Consider the complex, often insidious role of confession, both genuine and, as we saw here, tragically false in the pursuit of justice. How can external pressures, be they societal, religious, or psychological, lead someone to profess a lie? And what are the enduring repercussions of such falsehoods, not just for the individual, but for communities and the very concept of justice itself?
This deeply unsettling chapter and our exploration today leaves us grappling with timeless questions of moral responsibility and the often unseen victims caught in the turbulent wake of unchecked ambition and failures of human judgment. It's a dark, profoundly thought-provoking corner of Frankenstein, and we hope this deep dive has illuminated some new aspects of its enduring power for you.